I'm going to introduce our first speaker, Sissy Goff. I love Sissy Goff. The work that she does has directly benefited my family in deeply meaningful ways, and I can only assume that many of you in this room would say the same thing. I don't think you can throw a rock without hitting somebody who has been blessed by the work that Sissy Goff does. In 1993, since then, she's been the director of child and adolescent counseling at Daystar Counseling Ministries here in Nashville. Sissy has sat across the table from more families and kids in this city than anybody. And she's had her finger on the pulse of the struggles and the fears both kids and parents feel, and the unique pressures that come with the territory of living in this city at this time. She brings a wealth of information and experience, and also a deep affection for the city that she serves, and that's a beautiful combination. And so I'm so thankful that Sissy is with us, and I'm glad that we get to hear from her now. Please welcome Sissy Goff.
It's been a fascinating evening, hasn't it? I'm excited to be here with you all talking about, I'm glad that slipped there, besides the clock, raising healthy adolescents, sorta. And I want to start off with the sorta. When Scott Sauls called and asked me if I would talk about raising healthy adolescents, my first thought was healthy adolescents. I don't know that I would normally put those two words in the same sentence. Just by nature of what we know to be true about development, there are so many changes taking place inside of them, in their brains and their bodies. They're kind of in this constant state of upheaval. A mom came to my office and told me that her daughter had come home from school crying and said, "Mom, I don't know what's going on with me. I've just been so sad and so up and down emotionally." And she said, "I really am worried I might be bipolar." And her mom's response was, "Oh, honey, there's no way you're bipolar. You're never that happy." But they're just all over the place, as we know, those of us who love adolescents. And so the concept of healthy in adolescence is complicated. And I also want to say, as we're launching into the portion of the evening on healthy, I feel a little bit like about health, like C.S. Lewis talked about humility, when he said, "The humble man will not be thinking about humility. He will not be thinking about himself at all." That if you think you are not conceited, you are very conceited indeed. And probably any of us who think we're healthy aren't. But hopefully we're progressing toward it. And those of us who are adults that love adolescents are leading them in the progression. So I want to tell y'all, actually I want to start with some sentences that teenagers have shared with me in my office in the last 6 months or so. "I've been thinking about killing myself because this world doesn't deserve me. I don't want to start this self-growth thing. I just want to be mad. The closer I get to Jesus, the more I realize I treat other people like peasants." Don't even know what to say about that one. "I don't want to grow. I just want to be understood. You can either feel or you can function." And let me tell you a story I heard not too long ago. I was counseling a girl who had come to Daystar for depression. She'd been cutting herself. We worked together for several months. She was starting to do better. And she was invited on spring break with this friend with whom she had a pretty conflictual relationship. And so they went off together and got into an argument. And the girl that I counsel went into the bathroom, took a razor, started to cut herself, texted her friend and said, "Help," which was great. The friend's response, literally, you all, the friend's response was, "I'll be there in a second. I'm standing on the balcony thinking about jumping off." Something's wrong. They're not healthy. We're often not healthy. And I have counseled teenagers now for 24 years. And I honestly would say that in the last 3 years, there's been a more drastic change than ever before. And I believe kids today are more entitled than ever, and I would say even emotionally entitled. They're more entitled, less equipped. They feel more power, but less purpose. They have more curiosity, but I think less of a genuine sense of connection. I think they feel less hope, less of a sense of who they are. and less of a belief that God has really called them to make a difference. We have to do what we can to change the climate these kids are living in. And I think that starts with conversation. And I do want to say, obviously, anxiety is considered a childhood epidemic in America today. Probably 8 out of 10 of the new families that are coming to Daystar now are coming for that reason, where I counsel. Depression and suicide rates are skyrocketing among kids. Those things are so real and something we need to be addressing. With kids, we need to be talking about, we need to be helping them work through. But I think part of what's happening too is these kids who have big emotions and need big words to describe their emotions are running out of room. And as they're doing so, I think they're losing 2 things primarily. The first is perspective, the second is resourcefulness. The perspective thing makes sense. When we were growing up, not that we're all the same age, but those of us who are adults in the room, when we were growing up, probably the worst thing we could think of to say was, I'm going to run away from home. Today, we have kids who are as young as 8 who are coming to our offices saying, I want to kill myself. We had a 9-year-old today. Their parents will say, I don't even know how they've heard of that. I have kids diagnosing themselves weekly in my office. Again, don't know where they learn the terms. Probably 60 to 70% of the adolescent girls I see tell me that they've had a panic attack at some point along the way. Some really have had panic attacks. And for some, I try to explain that none of us can breathe when we cry really hard. It's not a panic attack. Several years ago, a girl came to see me who told me that her mom had hit her in the stomach. And I knew this girl, I knew her mom. I didn't think her mom had probably hit her. But I'm a mandated reporter, and so I had to pursue the situation further. We talked for a lot longer, and what she ended up saying to me was, what my mom said to me hurt me so badly that it was like she hit me in the stomach, and I needed somebody to listen. So I've started talking about this thing in my office a lot with families because of all this, and that's just a scale, kind of like when you go to the ER and there's the scale with the faces, 1 to 10. So I've started talking about an emotional scale with kids. We think about 1 to 10 and emotions. Because part of what I think is happening is for adolescents today, and even kids who are younger, when the 1s and 2s and 3s are coming in, they're registering them all as 10s. They've lost perspective in that way. And so what I will tell parents to do a lot is in a moment when things are calm and okay, talk about a scale, talk about what a 10 is. What's the worst thing your child can imagine happening? And it's great to talk about as an adult if you have teenagers. And we need to do it alongside of them. So what's the worst thing they can imagine happening? And so then when your adolescent gets in the car after school and says, this is the worst day I've ever had in my whole life, you can listen and then say, tell me what it is on your scale. We want them to be able to feel and to function, both. That's what it's going to take to work through life. The second thing they've lost is resourcefulness. And a friend of mine said to me recently, I wish when I was growing up, my mom had said, you've got this, more than let me get this for you. I think we're saying, let me get this for you way too much. We're connecting the dots for them. We're problem solving for them. Honestly, I think we're so busy being their resources that they're not developing resourcefulness. And I think we're coddling them too much too, at every age. And we have a summer camp at Daystar, and a parent came up to me when she was picking up her son from camp this summer and said, I'm so thankful that my son wasn't stung by a bee this week. It would have taken him out for the entire week. We all get stung by bees all the time. Those are the 1s and 2s and 3s on the scale. We've got to feel and function. And what even anxiety specialists will say is that to work through our anxiety, we basically have to do the scary thing. So, how can we change the conversation with teenagers? What can we do to create both of these things? I've started using 2 words in my office with parents of teenagers the most, and I literally repeat them over and over, even as they're walking out my door. Empathy and questions. Empathy and questions. That we want to hear them so that they don't have to use big words just to get our attention. We want to listen, and then we want to ask them questions. What do you think would help that situation? Who do you want to be in that? What do you feel like God has called you to do in the midst of that? Questions create resourcefulness. And I firmly believe kids need resourcefulness to get through life. They need perspective too. I think real health involves both for all of us. When we listen to kids and help them find their way to problem solve, we're basically communicating to them that we believe that they're capable. That's what we want them to hear. We want them to believe they're strong and resilient and brave, that who they are makes a difference, that they have a voice, and that they matter. And I strongly believe that if more adolescents believe they mattered to us, to God, and to the world, we'd have more health, and they'd experience a whole lot more hope. Thank you.